Within the first few days of Ashes of the Dam's release, the player base quickly became aware that the rules we thought we had understood about the Dark Aether had changed. Element 115 is back. Astra Malorum's intro seems to make this even more abundantly clear, with 115 meteorites all over the place, with the entity even spitting them out of her mouth, similar to how the Apothecans did in the Revelations intro, sending them through a portal to contaminate worlds, essentially perpetuating the cycle. Note that the Apothecan 115 son, seemingly 115's source, is from the Dark Aether, and when the Shadow Man breaks Agatha, he essentially opens up the Dark Aether to the realm, allowing his allegiance to be free. So Revelations was essentially our first Dark Aether map, which is why there are these parallels. And is the cycle now continuing once again? Can we trust the entity, or is she nefarious? So is that all there is to this story then? Trek have reversed their position from the ending of Tag der Toten, the Aether storyline is now fundamentally pointless, and the Primus and Ultimus characters died for nothing. Considering the fact that new iterations of them are back, 115 is back, the multiverse seems to be on the precipice of returning, did Nikolai fail? Except it's not quite that simple. So in this video I want to outline exactly what is going on with Element 115's return, how we know it's back in the first place, how it can even be back, and this will involve debunking a common myth, and what this means on both the small and cosmic scales of the zombie storyline. First off, for those of you who might be joining us after the Aether storyline, as we are getting closer to a decade since its end, or have just forgotten the significance, let's briefly go over Element 115. Called Unum Pentium, or Divinium, this was an element discovered by Group 935 in the Aether story's original dimension in the years leading up to the Second World War. With it, they constructed great and terrible weapons, raised the dead, and most crucially of all, found a way using the element to teleport through time and space. What they didn't understand at the time is that 115 was, in fact, the fabric of the universe itself. This is because 115 was indistinguishable from the Aether, the higher dimension that permeated everything, from the beginning universe to the tiniest atom. Element 115 was effectively the Aether's energies crystallized into physical form and present in the material universe, and through its use, the Aether's influence spread, breaking existence over and over again until the mess that we experience in the Aether storyline became the natural state, with a fractured universe. It is the fundamental plot device of the Aether storyline. As a last note, it commonly appears as a rock with glowing blue gems studded throughout, though in the past was depicted as a rusty orange colour, before Jason Blundell took over. In a similar vein, here is a quick refresher on Aetherium. Present since the Machine, Aetherium is a mysterious element from the Dark Aether. Unlike 115, it is not considered as a part of the natural periodic table of the elements, instead being considered an exo-element, as in exterior, outside of the universe, because it's from a different universe. Exo-element 1, to be specific. This designation was given as it was the first material found exo or outside of the reality we know. This is interesting as it implies the possible existence of more elements from the Dark Aether, but that's a question for another time. Aetherium is most commonly found in the form of purple crystals, these having the property of slowly stripping the memories away of any who come into contact with them. If these individuals are particularly weak in willpower, the extraction of their memories will also have the effect of beginning to mutate them into a creature of the Dark Aether. At its most basic, this is necrotization, the process of Aetherium killing and reanimating a body, but to the more extreme ends, this is full-on mutation. What is interesting is that undead created through Aetherium can be restored relatively easily, when compared to the Aether storyline zombies, as the scrubbing of Aetherium contamination from the brain can allow the host's original personality to become present whilst their body is still undead. Aetherium has occasionally appeared in gas and liquid states as well, with the gaseous Aetherium being what creatures in the Dark Aether breathe, without the need for oxygen. The Dark Aether node crystals that appear in our world is the Dark Aether contaminating and terraforming our world to allow its inhabitants to live. Liquid Aetherium has apparently only been seen a handful of times and is apparently a rare thing. Aetherium's more potent form, Primordial Aetherium, is seemingly another name for Prima Materia, a proto-matter that can be shaped into anything. This is made and stored in orbs through the memory removal process I described a moment ago, and is often represented through these spores, as well as red Aetherium crystals. What's important to understand here is that Aetherium is a lot more grounded than 115. Yes, it allows for some similar fantastical plot occurrences as its blue or sometimes orange cousin from the ether, but it works in apparently different ways. We have also seen element 115 appear in other colours before, such as purple and green on Zetsubou no Shima. Green 115 even shows up in the Moon Easter egg song, and so far the occurrences of element 115 that we've seen in Black Ops 7 have only been blue, although it is important to note that it shows up as orange once more in Modern Warfare Zombies. So there was a lot of speculation back in the day about what the colour of element 115 meant. Does it just represent different universes, considering it was orange in the originals, and then with the Chronicles versions it then became blue? But really, the different colours might mean something more. But let's talk about the distinction between 115 and Aetherium. Let's take Aetherium zombies. As mentioned, these creatures are incredibly easy to cure, at least partially, as we do it in D Machine with all of, whereas in the Ether storyline this is basically unheard of. Moreover, however, element 115 always appear to be more transcendent in nature. After all, it's not really a rock or an element at all, but just physical pieces of a force that is within all of existence. Moreover, the souls of our main characters in the Ether storyline, Dempsey and Nikolai, Takeo and Richtofen, were bound to the Ether thanks to Richtofen's experiments, intrinsically linking them with the elemental shard, the purest form of Aetherium. This making it so those four would always be involved in the proliferation of the Ether itself. Aetherium, on the other hand, does exactly what we expect. Sometimes we have revelations about how it works, but often it's just very straightforward. Even when Vanguard Zombies introduced rune magic used by the Dark Ether entities, it was still very much just manipulating Aetherium. There was really not much of a difference between the machines of Requiem and Omega and the spells of Cortifex. They accomplished the same goals through different means. Science, magic, it's all the same thing really. But all of this has changed with Ashes of the Damned. In Ashes of the Damned, during the Necrofluid Gauntlet Wonder Weapon quest, we have to interact with the generators we previously initiated to power the map. Now, the resemblance to the Origins generators is pretty clear, and although not identical, this does seem to be what Trek is trying to evoke. After filling the ether barrel with the energy extracted from the generator, Grey makes a comment saying, "Pure Aetherium, there's lots you can do with this," which is about what we'd expect. Nothing abnormal about this step compared to anything in recent past. Richtofen, however, says something remarkable. Either one of these quotes on their own would appear to tell us exactly what is going on in the step. But what on earth is going on here? How can it be both? This shouldn't be possible, should it? Is element 115 merely the purest, refined form of Aetherium all along, since you collect refined etheric energy from these canisters? We already know that whilst Aetherium and 115 have some similar uses, they seem to work on totally different rule sets. There's surely no way they can be the same thing. Perhaps Richtofen or Grey are mistaken, but I don't think so. What would be the point in these quotes if that was the case? I get using a bit of the unreliable narrator trope to make the story more interesting, but if either one of these characters, who are meant to both be scientific experts, are wrong, then we simply cannot trust any quote ever again. So they are both right then. How can we reconcile this? It might not be as difficult as we imagine. Before we get into that though, I have the perfect horror game Call of Duty Zombies fans will love. Stay tuned. I need to talk about something that legitimately gave me chills when I found out. Good old game just resurrected Cold Fear, the 2005 survival horror gem that has been completely unplayable on modern PCs for years. Crashes, black screens, broken compatibility, it was dead. The game even got pulled from digital stores entirely. But GOG said no. This one deserves a second chance. They went in, fixed every single issue, made it rock solid stable, fully preserved, and of course 100% DRM free, so you own it forever. Some games deserve a second chance, and they are proud to bring this one back better than ever. You step into the boots of Tom Hansen, a washed up Coast Guard veteran who just wants to keep his head down and save lives. Then one night in a ferocious Arctic storm, your team gets orders to board a drifting Russian whaler, sending distress signals. You get on deck and no humans left. Just blood, bodies, and something inhuman moving in the dark. What starts as a rescue turns into a fight for your life as you uncover a parasite that mutates everything it touches. You've got shotguns, flamethrowers, improvised traps, anything you can grab, because the ship itself is trying to kill you. Massive waves rock the deck. You are sliding around, aiming is a nightmare. One wrong step and you are overboard into freezing water. You'll cross paths with the only other survivors, Dr. Victor Kamsky, the brilliant but doomed scientist whose research unleashed this nightmare, his daughter, Anna, rebellious, tough, taken hostage to force his cooperation, and the cold-blooded CIA agent, Jason Bennett, who's been watching the whole disaster from the shadows, ready to let everyone die if it means containing the truth. This is peak 2005 survival horror. Resident Evil 4 vibes, but on a storm-tossed ghost ship in the Arctic. And now, finally, you can actually play it the way it was meant to be experienced. To celebrate the re-release, GOG is giving every new account 15% off your very first purchase on the entire store. Not just for Cold Fear, anything you want. Just use the code COLD15 at checkout like you can see on screen. One-time use, so stuff that cart with as many items as you want. The link is down in the description if you want to check it out. The discount code COLD15 is live right now. Go grab a horror classic that actually works again, and I'll see you on the bloodstained decks of that whaler. Just try not to scream too loud when the first exocell jumps at your face. Thank you so much to them for sponsoring this video, and I hope you experience the chills. When the Dark Aether storyline began, some theorists, myself included, were really eager to just park everything from the Aether storyline. At the time, the community response was really negative, and while there are a lot of valid criticisms in the way that Cold War portrayed some of its story, I still think to this day that Trek did a phenomenal job with making something new, but there was certainly bias in the discussion. Any implication from anyone, from the community or in the game itself, that Element 115 was AETHERIUM was met with dismissal in response, from myself included, and this has carried on until Modern Warfare Zombies essentially, where I shifted my opinion, which I've been elaborating on in videos. Now whilst this much is true, I still do not think 115 and AETHERIUM are exactly the same thing, but I don't think Richtofen and Grey are wrong either. I just think we've been looking at it totally the wrong way. First off though, if Grey hadn't said what she said, this issue would be really simple. As much as it might annoy some people who are only fans of the Dark Aether storyline, 115 in some capacity absolutely should exist, and we know this for a fact thanks to some dialogue that I think we've taken for granted for a long time.
When we are gone, so too is everything that spewed forth from the ether. Element 115, the Apothecars, even Monty himself, all of it will be banished to where it belongs. The Dark Aether.
Nikolai at the ending of Tag the Totem literally told us explicitly that Element 115 wasn't gone. We should have known this. One thing they hammer home over and over again in Alpha Omega and Tag the Totem is that the only way to break the cycle is to totally destroy the ether, and that is impossible by normal means. Why? Because its influence is felt on too many things. Element 115 is the most clear sign of this. It's the ether's energy condensed down into physical form. Each 115 rock has a finite amount of ethereal energy, like coal for chemical energy. And we know this to be the case as Group 935 always burned through it and needed more. Primus and Ultimus couldn't just use up all of the 115, as that would shatter reality and allow for more of it to form. Equally, they couldn't just leave it, as future humans would use it and begin the spread of the ether again. So what was necessary was to seal it somewhere that it couldn't be used by humans in reality. The Dark Aether. In fact, I think this is exactly why we see it in Astra Malorum. If the entity has held the characters in a pocket dimension made from Dr. Monty's house from Agatha, it makes total sense that there would be Element 115 there. And Agatha itself may have been banished to the Dark Aether alongside everything else, and this rock is a remnant of its remains. So without Grey's quote about it being AETHERIUM, this would be open and shut, but alas, we need to deal with that now. When initially trying to write up this video, I was racking my brains trying to figure out just what Trek could have intended by this. It honestly just seemed like a mistake. Taking a break to think about how I wanted to formulate this video, I went and wrote the video on the Shadowsmiths and Vaetherion, which I'll leave a link to on screen and below, and it was during the research for that video that the answer came to me. Spiritus. The inciting incident of Ashes of the Damned is the Warden using the power of the Shadowsmiths, primordial beings of the Dark Aether, to steal a portion of the characters' souls using the Cage Skull artifacts, enough that they are severely debilitated but not enough to kill them. Throughout the map, the name of this essence or soul is revealed to us, Spiritus, in the Dempsey side quest, where AETHERIUM speaks to him directly, when he remembers his history in Vietnam, with alternative non-eye patch weaver. As a result of our characters having their Spiritus stolen from them, not quite in its entirety, but enough to have them on the verge of death, they are now under the Warden's control, and have lost a great deal of their memories. This should sound familiar to any players of Black Ops 3 and 4. In my Shadowsmiths video, I pointed out this fact that the siphoning of the character's Spiritus mirrors that of the taking of Primus and Ultimus's souls, which the narrative of Black Ops 7 is clearly trying to mirror and invert. But today I'm going to do more theorizing. In actual fact, I think the two acts are identical. Consider it this way: using the summoning key, we extract the Spiritus of Dempsey, Nikolai, Takeo, and Richtofen. As the ether is one singular existence shattered into pieces, taking the souls of the Ultimus variants also does the same for all of the other versions of them in existence. But I think about the act itself. In order to take that Spiritus, we can only do so at the moment of death. The summoning key, which is meant to be the most powerful artifact in the entire ether, is not capable of simply extracting the entire Spiritus from someone. It might be argued that doing so would clearly kill the characters, as we see the Warden ensure not to do by leaving part of the souls in our new crews in place. But in Black Ops 3, killing the characters is a foregone conclusion anyways. We have always considered souls as ethereal energy. Looking back to Moon and Black Ops 2's Victus maps, it's clear to see why. The term is used constantly when referring to things that need to be changed with the souls of zombies, and we see manifestly that it is an energy source, but we never really questioned it or thought to reevaluate it in the years since the Dark Aether storyline began. Now it seems to me that this is the missing piece for explaining this conundrum. Earlier in the video, I compared 115 to coal. This was very intentional on my part. In the world today, coal is still a common energy source, although lessening, and we use it because it is a store for chemical energy. All life has chemical energy in, and thanks to thousands of years of pressure underground, plant matter that contains this chemical energy is compressed into the coal we use. This isn't the only form of it, though. Another common fossil fuel used is crude oil. This is still a chemical substance that contains chemical energy and is formed in a similar way, but instead of plants, it is formed from the vast amounts of marine plankton, some of which are plants, and is instead in a liquid state. In spite of the fact that these two sources of energy seem drastically different in nature, they contain the same type of energy within, and this is exactly what I think is going on with 115 and Aetherium. They are two different methods of storing the same type of energy, that being Spiritus. 115 and Aetherium have different properties when utilized, but one area where they are remarkably similar in is power. We can't know exactly what differences they may have. The 115 generators in Origins, for example, produced energy fields that effectively acted as portals. However, these could more be explained by unique properties within the ether itself. What we can say for certain, however, is that both in the ether and Dark Aether storylines, Spiritus appears to act in an identical way. Both 115 and Aetherium are derived from it. Because of this, I think Ashes of the Damned already offers us the perfect explanation for the generator being powered by Element 115 and Aetherium simultaneously. It's because, as far as Grey and Richtofen are concerned, they are both right. They are just the natural states of the Spiritus in their own worlds, and it is being used for the exact same ends. Now, to be honest, I think since the Dark Aether storyline, Trek did not intend on bringing Element 115 back, and I say this for the simple fact that whilst yes, Nikolai says Element 115 was banished to the Dark Aether in the Tag the Totem ending, you're telling me that in Cold War zombies, as well as Vanguard zombies, we went in the Dark Aether and we didn't see Element 115 once. It just doesn't make sense that Trek would create this new element for this new chapter, and then we just never hear from 115 again. Honestly, I think they were trying to start afresh, and so they made this new element, and maybe they envisioned Aetherium to potentially contain the remnants of Element 115, or 115 just melted when it got plunged into the Dark Aether, filling the atmosphere and dissipating, but not being linked to the original characters anymore since the ether got dissipated. However, I think over the years, Trek saw the back and forth between the arguments on Aetherium as well as 115, and they decided, you know what, technically we did just say 115 got banished to the Dark Ether, we're going to start bringing it back once more, and that's why it showed up in Modern Warfare Zombies. That's why it then shows up on the ray gun in Black Ops 6 and beyond. I think this was all for the purpose of they planned on bringing the original Zombies characters back, and of course their souls were literally bonded with 115. So in order to have the originals back, they also needed 115 back, and like I said, their canon never absolved it, but there definitely is a reason why it didn't show up in the Dark Ether at all. Now suddenly it's showing up all over Astra Malorum. There's definitely a reason for that, and like I said, I do think Trek were going to abandon 115, but they realized that they had never confirmed as such properly, and now they're really focusing on the past Ether storyline. It makes total sense for it to be at the forefront once more, but right now we're just seeing it inside of the Dark Ether. So far it hasn't showed up in the real world apart from the ray gun, I guess, and Modern Warfare Zombies, which is after Black Ops 7. So I think some sort of event in Black Ops 7, if the multiverse does end up returning by the end of the game, well, that would mean that the cycle has to perpetuate, which means that the 115 has to come out of the Dark Ether and start contaminating the real world like it did in Modern Warfare Zombies, because it showed up not just in the Dark Ether in that game, but also in the regular world in Urzikstan. But yeah, it is really strange reflecting on the Ether storyline, because Aetherium and I guess Prima Materia should have been there all along, yet we never saw these purple crystals show up or the other coloured crystals that we've seen of Aetherium. We only ever saw Element 115, and yes, it might be able to be recontextualized now with just a pure form of Aetherium or something like that, a distilled form, but it still doesn't explain why we didn't see the other variants unless we did all along, and that's why different colours of 115 showed up, because it's similar to the different colours of Aetherium and Prima Materia that have been showing up. We've literally seen Aetherium as orange, for example, and red with the Primordial Aetherium, and all sorts of colours. But yeah, let me know all of your thoughts on this in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I hope this video helps clear up a great deal of confusion I've seen around these quotes. Obviously this is all just theory, but I think it genuinely works so well, especially seeing as this game, like I say, is basically an inverse of Black Ops 3, and with Black Ops 3 closing the cycle and restarting it, I think this one's actually going to spring it to life, which in a way is what happened at the ending of Revelations anyways. But I think the Warden will achieve his goal by the end. The multiverse will return. I think it's partially returning right now, which is why we're seeing alternative histories, but I don't think it's fully back just yet, because that would defeat the point of the Warden's goal and what his purpose is of taking our souls, which I think is using our memories to try and restore the multiverse based on them. Anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not even latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thanks for watching, and bye. To conclude this video, I want to shout out the fact that I finally decided to make a Patreon and Cameo account, both of which will be linked below if you want to help support the channel. On Patreon, you can sign up for the lowest tier of just $1.50 a month to get exclusive access for my Discord, where we can discuss Zombies lore, trivia, or whatever you desire. A place where you lot, my community, can better connect. Your names will also appear at the end of videos thanking you. For $5.50 a month, you get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive monthly Q&As. And for $16.50 a month, you again get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive lore videos, such as unpacking niche parts of the Trek documents I've been breaking down on my channel that don't as much suit a main channel video. For the highest tier, only for those with the ability to and who really want to help out the channel, you get special bonuses I've yet to determine and verbal shoutouts at the end of every video. Over on Cameo, I can do funny videos reading lines from zombies, memes like how do we tell him, birthday wishes for friends or family, or whatever else you desire, practically anything. Of course, none of this is necessary, just watching and enjoying the videos helps me immensely and I greatly appreciate it. However, I think it's about time I start setting up additional revenue streams because Zombies' popularity is tumultuous and always goes through ups and downs. As I'm sure you've lately seen on the channel, viewership is down a lot. We go through big highs when new games release, but then during these drought periods, I need more income stability so I don't have to worry as much about it and I can focus more on improving the quality of the content. My highest quality videos are not always the ones that best please YouTube algorithms, so instead, this way I can produce my best work knowing I don't have to think as much about how well the content's going to perform. So if you'd like to support me on Patreon for exclusive content or would like a simple Cameo message, you can do so to further support me via the links below, but only if you can afford it and you actually want to help me. Don't feel like you are forced to, don't worry, I'll survive. It would just help relieve some of the pressure during inconsistent periods on the channel, so I don't have to solely rely on AdSense revenue, and still maintain the sheer quantity and quality of content that I put out. Obviously, I pump out literally a boatload of content, and some of these are absolutely crazy projects over hour-long videos, so it's a lot on my plate, especially when these videos don't perform particularly well. And I've not been doing many sponsorships lately to help supplement revenue either, so it would greatly help. Thank you for any generous person once again who does kindly support the channel. It means the absolute world and will really help keep this boat afloat.